Yeah. Great. And then we also have our council member, Shana Abreu, who's also joining us this evening. Shana is in the attendees list. If someone can promote the council member, please. Thank you. Okay. Just checking to see if other members of the committee will be able to join us. Hopefully shortly.
Everyone, just full disclosure, I have an infant in the background. My husband's going to try to keep her quiet, but you may hear her occasionally, so I apologize in advance.
Nicole, you are in good company. I think. So I have two kids. They're often always in the background, so all good. Pets are welcome as well.
That's good to know I have a dog, but I'll be able to keep her more quiet than I will the baby.
So it's 7:04. I will say this isn't usually our meeting time. We usually meet, this committee usually meets first Thursday of the month, but in keeping in mind with Passover and some of the other religious holidays this month, we shifted it a little bit. So we might be light on the ground, as they say, for the committee, but we'll just give members another 2 or 3 minutes if that's okay. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Good evening, everybody.
Good to see you, Marshall. Ebenezer, I have a question, if you wouldn't mind. We do not have quorum. Are we still able to move ahead with the meeting? Just no voting. Am I correct in that?
That should be correct.
Or yeah, if anyone else wants. Thanks, Jay. That's what I thought. I was like, I think we can move forward as long as there's no voting. Okay, cool. So we'll give maybe 2 more minutes and then I'll say, let's go ahead and get started. If that's okay. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. And then hopefully we'll have members join us later, but then we also have the recording as well. So that's always good to have. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our April meeting of the Housing and Human Services Committee of Community Board 12. Thank you, Ebenezer. Thanks for joining, everyone. Again, as I shared, we are not meeting at our usual, at weekly Thursday or monthly Thursday, excuse me, due to the holidays, but we are still here and looking forward to a really good meeting. So before we start, maybe I'll go ahead and turn it over to the committee members that we do have on the line this evening, just to briefly introduce themselves. And then I'll go through our agenda, and then we can kind of turn it over to our presenters this evening. So I'm Marielle Ali, and I am the chair of the Housing and Human Services Committee. I've been on the community board since 2020, with a little bit of a brief hiatus, but I'm back. Jay, over to you.
Yeah, Jay Bias. I'm a new board member appointed last year of May, so coming on a year. Born and raised in Washington Heights, and then pass it on to Marshall.
Yes, I'm Marshall Vanderpool. I used to be the first vice president of the Dyckman Resident Association in Dyckman Houses. I am currently a public member of the Housing and Human Services Committee, and I kind of drop in on different Zoom meetings.
Thanks, Marshall. And as I mentioned, and thank you, Jay, as well, we have other members as well. Some will be joining us a little bit later, and some unfortunately are unable to join us this evening. But again, we do have the recording as a reference. So today we're gonna have two presentations, and then followed by those presentations, we're gonna have our updates from some of the electeds, possibly. So first, we're gonna have a presentation from Cardinal McCloskey Foster Care. And that will be followed by a short Q&A, and then we'll then have a presentation from the New York City Department of Veterans Services, followed by a Q&A. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to the colleagues from the Cardinal McCloskey Foster Care. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves. Do you need any kind of share your screen or anything like that?
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. Either if Jay or Ebenezer can help us with that. Thank you.
How many people need to share the screen? Alexis only?
I think just, but it looks like we dropped, Alexis dropped to an attendee. Not sure. Let's see what happened. Okay, there, Alexis is back. And while we're there, wonderful. While we're there, Nicole, will you need to share your screen as well? Okay, so if we can just give Nicole privileges, just so that Nicole has that for later.
I still can share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, just give us 1 second. I think they're working on it now.
All right, sounds good.
There we go. It looks like you should be able to try now.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Alexis Zavila. I work for Cardinal McCloskey. I'm here with my coworker Arube, and we're going to talk to you guys about foster care. So, before we even get to foster care, we're going to talk a little bit about Cardinal McCloskey. We've been around since 1946, so we've been doing a lot of human service work, right? We've been around, we know what's important, we believe in the sanctity of family, right? So whatever we can do to support families, we're going to do it. We do this by supporting children and teens who have suffered from neglect and trauma. We also do this by supporting adults with developmental disabilities. You may see Cardinal McCloskey in a couple of places, right? We have a charter school, we have a whole bunch of daycares, right? Daycares are everywhere. And we have all these things that we're able to do because we do want to support families. We're here specifically to talk about the foster care program that we have. And our mission as a foster program is to really advocate for children and families in need and to care and promote safe and stable environments. A lot of children are coming into care and there's not enough homes to house them. So Arube and I are here to really talk about foster care, talk about the stigma and the fear, right, of foster care and what that looks like, and present as well as we can. So even if necessarily you guys don't want to be foster parents, maybe you know someone who will. We also are going to be open to answering as many questions as possible because we want to make sure that you guys are aware about what foster care is. All right. So I'm going to push it off to Arube, who's going to talk about our values.
Hi, so nice to meet you guys. So yes, speaking on our values, we definitely work with families with compassion, dignity, respect. We work towards getting them to be the best foster parents, best caregivers, the best supporters that they can be for the children that we care for. We promote responsibility and innovation and excellence, and working with the parents and the foster parents both, providing support just so that they could become the best caregivers for the children in their care, the parents so that they can learn from whatever mistakes they made that landed their children in foster care, and the foster parents that is taking care of the child, learning their needs and learning how to best support them while they're in care. Embracing diversity, we work with a diverse number of people, and we work and ensure and promote that whatever placement where the child is placed is a place where their cultures are being satisfied, their needs are being satisfied as an individual. And in helping each person realize their potential, just like it says, we work diligently with families so that they are their best person while they work in our foster care system. All right, on to you, Alexa.
Thank you. And so foster care is a big program. They say it takes a village. We take this seriously when it comes to foster care, right? So you'll have different units in our foster program. We have a case planning team, and those are the people who are really there for your day-to-day. They're your advocates. A home finding team are the folks who are going to onboard you, right? Provide you with support, tell you all about the process. We have a clinical team. A lot of our kids are coming into care with trauma, right? Even the notion of being taken away from your family is traumatic. And oftentimes, more often than not, right, they're taken away from a reason. So when you're getting a child, they're going to come in with some trauma. So you need support with that. So that's why our clinical team is really important. An education department, right? So maybe you have a teacher and you're not understanding why your child is not learning properly, or you need support in advocating for your child. Our education department is going to support that. We also have an adoption and intake program and a training program. So for all of our children, right? And these are the programs that they can be part of, the PYA, the strategies for success, adoption services. We want to make sure our kids find permanency. So whether that's helping them know how to do taxes, right? Which it's important for all of us to know, or helping them know how to find apartments, helping them with financial literacy, right? Anything that we feel like is appropriate for our kids to thrive and learn how to be successful adults, we're going to provide them with those opportunities. So like I said, you're not raising these children by yourself, right? They are in your home 24/7, right? And you do the blunt of the work, but we are going to support you. This is a foster care program. And so I just want to clarify that foster care is temporary, right? There are opportunities for adoption, but our main goal is reunification. We really want to be able to support the children and their families, and hopefully the kids can go back home. If they cannot go back home, we want to find permanency for them some way. And oftentimes that's either with kinship, so grandma or grandpa, or with the foster parents that they've grown up with, right? We don't want to just put them in strangers' homes. And so though foster care is definitely supposed to be temporary, and we want reunification to be our goal, if that doesn't happen, we don't mind talking about adoption, because our kids deserve to know that they're from there, right? Our kids deserve to know that they're going to be somewhere and they're going to be safe and it's going to be long lasting. So now, go ahead.
Sorry.
It's
So
okay.
just speaking of statistics, we do have a children's center. That is where a good number of the cases that we have come from. These are children that are taken either for whatever reason, they're brought into foster care. There's quite a number of children in the children's center. I'm not quite sure what the number is. It's in the 60s, I believe. But just for general statistics, so you know, the youngest child that we do have in the children's center right now is a 3-month-old little girl who has been in placement for 58 days. The ones that have been there the longest for 91 days is a set of siblings, a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old boy. And right now, the oldest that we have is a 19-year-old boy who has been there 8 days, but it was a replacement, meaning that he was in care before, but for whatever reason, that placement didn't work out, and he came back into the children's center. And these are kids that are unfortunately living in a place where they could be uncomfortable. They don't know like what situation they're in. They don't have a parent's care. They definitely, not that they can benefit, but they urge for some stability. And unfortunately, while they are in these centers, there's not much stability to their day-to-day.
Absolutely. And really quickly to think about it, right? Like this 3-month-old does not know what it is to have parents, right? Or to have a home, or to have someone to like cuddle her or coddle her when she's crying or tired or hungry, right? The people in the children's center do the best they can, but it's still a center and not a home. So this is why this is really important for us to show, because we do have children that need homes and love, and we want to make sure that we can place them. And that's why the work we do, right? When we talk about outreach is so important, because we want to be able to give them a chance to find that. So where are our children coming from? Our children are coming from all over New York City, but more specifically, they're coming from the South Bronx. And this, I always forget how to say it. So it's everybody tell me it's Manhattan, like the upper
Manhattan, yeah, the Heights,
right? So in the Heights,
Harlem,
Dykeman,
Inwood,
Harlem.
yeah, Dykeman.
Yes. See, I'm a Bronx girl, so I'm always like, okay, the Bronx, but no, so Upper Manhattan and the Bronx, right? These are where a lot of our kids are coming from. And so what's the importance of the reason why we're in your community boards, right? Specifically Upper Manhattan and the South Bronx, because we don't want to take them away too far from home, right? So much of their world is changing. We at the very least want to keep them in their school district, right? At the very least, we want them to have some form of like knowing of where they are. They may be in a different apartment, they may be with a different family, but if they can still go to that corner store they love, they can still go to that library where they find support, they can still go to that after school program where they know they're going to be safe, that makes a big difference. And so we try to do outreach in the communities that we know our children are coming from, because at the very least, we want them to know where they're going, even if they don't know whose home they're in at first. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes? Wonderful. And honestly, when you think about it, right, these kids are still part of your community. And so in order to better your community, right, we got to better our kids and our kids who grow up to be adults, and we want them to be able to strive and be successful community members as well. So let's talk about a timeline. Fostering is a tedious process, right? We're going to ask a lot of you because we are working with children and we want to make sure they're safe. So what does that look like? The fostering timeline is the start, which is an inquiry and orientation. The orientation, we talk a lot. We want to let you know everything that there is to be fostering, because we want you to make a well-informed decision. We're going to ask you for a lot of paperwork, a lot of personal information, right? Because like I said, it's a safety hazard. We want to make sure that you're on the up and up. We're going to do clearances, have a home visit. We're also going to put you in trainings. As a parent, it's difficult. Parenting children who go through trauma is even more difficult, right? So we want to be able to support you. So our first training is 4 days. And it kind of gives you the 101 of foster care. Our second training is 8 days. And it's a trauma-enforced training, right? How do you deal with children who have gone through so much? How do you see behaviors and recognize that it's not just that they want to be bad children? These are bad behaviors because they're hurting, right? What does that look like? So we want to be able to support you in this. So when you do have that child, right, it's not going to be easy. Parenting is never easy, whether it's foster or not. But at the very least, you can understand why this child is behaving this way. And then we do a home study, an interview. And then from there, once you're ready and you say, hey, you know what, I'm ready for my home to be open, and we're saying, you know what, we think that this person is a great foster parent or will be, then we open you and place children in your home.
And now,
Does anyone yeah, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you can do it.
Okay. No, I think she was going to ask if anybody has any questions because that previous slide was a lot of information.
And we could also do questions at the end too. So if you have questions, you can type them in the chat box and then we can answer them at the end.
So in speaking of trainings, there are specific trainings that have to be done yearly and ones that are done just off the bat once you become a once you do the application to become a foster parent. The first one is the orientation, which is when we meet, you tell us of your interest to become a foster parent, and that's what kicks off all the paperwork, all the things that need to be signed, all the documentations that need to be gathered to do the certification. The mini map is a 15-hour training that just talks about the ins and outs of fostering. That is just once that you do it in the beginning. You're not mandated to do it again, even if you transfer within agencies. The trip training is also one that is just once. That talks about dealing or knowing how to cope with the different situations. It's a module that helps foster parents to deal with or learn that these children come with trauma. Even just being removed from their home is a trauma, and that can cause specific behaviors so that they know not to think like, what is wrong with this child? Why is he acting this way? They think of they're asked to ask questions of, okay, how can I help you? What is going through your mind right now? How can I make this more comfortable and more of a suitable situation for you where you're coming into my home and we can help better manage all these behaviors. The reasonable and prudent training is annual. That is just prudent parenting. The CPR is a training that is done upon expiration. Unfortunately, we do not provide it. We don't have any CPR trained trainers, but we do provide sources to outside agencies that do provide that training. And then there's a 15-hour minimum annual training that is expected of our foster parents. And that all depends on what type of child you're taking on. You're taking a teenager, it's like being a parent to teenagers. You're taking a medically fragile child, just like the ins and outs of like managing all medications, attending appointments. If you have a special needs child who's in the spectrum, just dealing with tantrums, they're all geared to different types of parenting styles. So it's a matter of just what training interests you would like to take. And even if you don't have a foster child that is in the spectrum and you're interested in taking that training, you're more than welcome to do so. Okay.
All right. So as a foster parent, there are roles and responsibilities, right? We do want these kids to be reunified. So how do we do that? We have family visits. Our family visits are when foster families drop off the child to see their parents. They're all supervised visits. Families can reconnect and reunite and really learn from what they've done. You can expect folks who don't know better to be better. And so in this way, we're really able to support the biological parents in really understanding and knowing who their children are while the children get to be happy and see their families, right? Our children will also have appointments. They may have clinical appointments, right? They may suffer from allergies and they have to go to an allergist, right? Whatever it is that our children need, that's a nice way to say it, but you would have to do it, right? As a foster parent, that's one of your roles and responsibilities. We also have progress meetings. We want you to know what's going on at all times. So if parents are doing great, okay, let's talk about it. Just so you know, parents are doing well. If they're not doing so well, you still have to know because this affects your child, right? This seems like a silly one, but you do have to pick up and drop off your kids at school, right? Anything you would do as a family, right? Anything you would do as a parent, you're doing it with your foster kids as well. We have trainings. You'll have a home visit, somebody who's going to come to your house on a monthly basis, see how you're doing, the good, the bad, the ugly, the wonderful, right? We also want foster parents to be advocates. We can only know what's going on in your house if you let us know. If your child is not reading up to par and you need support, then we'll get you tutoring, right? Let's say your child is beyond their age, right? And they're incredibly brilliant and they need something more challenging. We're going to find something more challenging for your child. You would be your child's biggest advocate. So that's one of the roles and responsibilities of your children. And sanctuary caregiving, right? parenting this child, knowing that you have to come from a space where this kid has had trauma. And so you may have to be a little more gentle than you would be with other children, and more understanding and more compassionate. So those are the rules and responsibilities of foster children or foster parents. And we ask a lot of you, right? There's a lot of things that we need. So we need to be able to support you as well. So all of our children in care have health insurance. You're never going to pay for anything out of pocket, right? They all have accessibility to tutoring. We provide family events. Every year we go to the Bronx Zoo, we go have picnics, right? Some of our kids, especially our teenagers, we'll take them to different shows, to different Broadway shows. Also, it's pretty exciting, really fun. You'll have training. So whatever you feel like you need support in, we'll provide you with a resource for it. We also provide you financial support. Kids will eat you out of house and home, right? They're going to eat, they're going to grow. You need some financial support to help you with that. And we're going to provide it. And for our teenagers, we do have a lot of college planning, right? We also have our PYA program, which we talked about earlier. And that's like the financial literacy program, or any program that really is going to help them be successful adults. And this is the minimum, right? There's so many other things that we support you with, but these are the things that we really want you to know about.
Okay,
Okay.
now the big question, like, who makes a great foster parent? It's pretty much who makes a good parent is empathy and excellent listening skills. These kids come to you from sometimes broken homes. They have never known like true support. So it's just a matter of like, how would you treat your own child? Listening to your own child, listening to their needs. Perseverance when things go rough is pretty much like that goes with the training that we provide. And with the trip training and sanctuary model that we use, we teach our foster parents how to deal with temper tantrums, how to deal with a child who, let's say, is doing bad in school and they just like, it's up in the air, like different modes and methods to engage with the children, just to get them to be more involved in their day-to-day. Definitely flexibility and adaptability, just being able to be present and being able to, at a moment's notice, deal with specific situation. Like, let's say a child throws a tantrum, a baby can't stop crying. What do you do with a crying baby? Basic needs, check to see if they need a diaper change, check to see if they're hungry, maybe they're sleepy, just being present. Patience and humor. Kids like humor. It's kids relate more when their family members are not so strict. They're not easygoing, but they have a little swag to them. Stability and consistency. Definitely a parent or a foster parent who a child knows that is there for them. That is not there to gain anything else but their growth. An ability to guide and discipline children without the use of physical punishment. That is a major one. No corporal punishment whatsoever. No striking a child. There are definitely so many different ways to help a child grow that's not with physical violence. Being able to look after yourself emotionally and staying well. If you don't know yourself, how are you going to be able to care for somebody else? You got to know one word we use is a trigger. What makes you just not be unregulated? Not your emotions are at 100. What makes you go off? You should be able to know how to control yourself and know yourself so that you can provide the support to a child who is also in the same situation but is not able to regulate themselves. Being able to look after yourself. Sorry, I said that already. A willingness to work with other people in child's life. That's one major one because we have a lot of kids who they have medical needs, they have mental health needs. So it's a matter of working with their professionals that see them, just to see, like, making appointments, making sure that they're taking their medications, making sure that they're able to follow through with what the recommendations are from medical professionals. And a willingness to support the child's development. I'm sorry, but it's a person who works, or a parent who works for their child's development. It's a parent. What parent doesn't want to see their child succeed? You're pretty much taking the place of their parent. So a good foster parent is a good parent, a person who knows what their child's needs are. And this child who is a foster child who comes to you at whatever age of their life, and in that, listening to their inquiries, just speaking with them, you learn so much from them and are able to like foster them and help guide them to whatever good future they're planning to go to. So one thing that we are, all agencies, foster care agencies in New York City and New York State, are LGBTQ affirming, meaning that if you're not comfortable in taking a child that identifies as LGBTQ, chances are you're not going to become a foster parent, because a good number of the children that are in foster care do identify as LGBTQ. And what does this mean? Just respecting pronouns, knowing that even though a child at birth is assigned male, they could feel as female. Knowing that gender is so fluid. There's cisgender, there's non-binary, there's so many in-betweens. So it's just knowing that, and listening to the child, just speaking with them, as I said before, you learn so much about them. Being well informed, knowing that their experiences are not the same as ours. We have to know that at times they don't feel comfortable with themselves in whatever situation they may be in. So just knowing or helping them know that they're safe in your environment, that they're not going to be judged, that they're not going to be thought of as lesser beings, and that they're going to flourish wherever they go because of your support. Mm-hmm. We do provide trainings for foster parents. Definitely trainings is the best way to learn. I know that right now LGBTQ is LGBTQIA+. So it just evolves. It always evolves. There's something new always. Support groups. Cardinal McCloskey is a big support for the LGBT community, and we can definitely support you in any way as a foster parent to know more on the community, and just acceptance and compassion. Just let them know that they're human beings, that there is nothing wrong with them. God made them the way they are, and we love them. There's nothing, love is the only thing that they will ever know. And that will definitely help them grow so much.
Thank you, Ray. And this is really important, right? Because when you go to places like 14th Street and you see all those homeless youth, right? A lot of them that we've discovered are homeless because they were kicked out because of who they were and their identity. And one thing we're not going to do at Cardinal McCloskey, or really at any foster care agency, is put kids in homes that they can be re-traumatized. When we're taking them out of these situations, we want to take them out for the better, right? And so that's why being LGBT affirming is really important for us. We're not saying that that you have to let them come in and whatever, if they have a girlfriend and they have to bring their girlfriend in, like, you're still kids, right? You're still teenagers, so the rules for the house still apply to everyone, whether you are LGBT or you're heterosexual, whatever it is, right? You're still parenting them, but you're parenting them with compassion and understanding and awareness. And our kids need to know they are loved regardless, right? It don't matter who they love, what they love, whatever it is, we're going to love them for who they are. And so that's why New York City is very adamant, right? Not just Cardinal McCloskey, but New York City is very adamant about being LGBT affirming, right? And we're almost done. So who is who? Really quickly, because I don't want to take too much of your time. We have a home finding team, your home finding team, which is also Arube and I, right? We're part of that team. Those are the folks who are going to do your onboarding and recertification. So if you are a foster parent, you'll see us often, not as often as case planners, but you'll see us often enough to know that we can support you. We have a case planning team, and those are the folks who are going to support, monitor, and advocate for your child's well-being. And they also provide resources to bio and foster parents. We have a therapeutic program. All of our kids come into care with trauma. Some of our kids have more trauma than others. So for those who have more trauma than others, they're going to receive more support, right? We have case aides who are going to support, and this is where we talked about with visits, right? They're the ones who really teach families how to speak to each other, how to communicate. They're going to be the ones who are going to supervise the visits. And we have advocates, and this is actually new, so we're kind of excited about it, right? Our parent advocates are folks who have gone through the system, right? Whether it's because they themselves were in foster care, they were foster parents, right? They're able to talk from an experience not only as workers we don't understand because we've never gone through it, right? And they can talk about it firsthand instead of third hand like we can as workers. So these are the different folks that you're really going to meet very quickly if you decide to become a foster parent. So that being said, I know we had a lot of information because we wanted to make sure you guys were informed, but we would love to hear questions if you have them.
Yes, Marshall. I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, so are these children that are like removed from the home because of the courts?
So
Yes.
that's a great question, right? Because
These,
ACS is the one that removes the children, and we're the ones who help find them placement and reunification, but they are removed through court.
Okay. And I guess when they're removed, they come into your care. You have a facility that where the children stay until they're actually fostered out?
Yes, and so that would be the Children's Center. So all children for all agencies, right? Whether it's Cardinal McCluskey or any other agency in New York City, they all wait at the Children's Center until someone can say, oh, I can take this child with this age and this behavior. I'm willing to take them. So they're all at the Children's Center until they're able to find placement.
Okay, so they're not actually in McCluskey's care. They're at a you facilitate finding
Yes.
fosters so that they can come out of that circumstance. That's not maybe the best circumstance. They can get the one-on-one, or if it's a full family,
and
then
that's
they can get that type of support.
Right.
and
that's
that's why
what those are.
we
Go ahead,
work so
Ruby.
hard just to find foster homes that are in the area of where the child has been removed from, just so that they can remain in that area. And a foster parent who's able to, right now we're looking for foster parents who are able to take teenagers. We have a good number of foster parents who are able to take children from birth to 6, but we have a few foster parents that are able to take from 6 to 24, which is the age when you can come out of foster care if you're in high school, if you go to college. But right now, like the emphasis of foster parents that we're looking for is for so that we can, for foster parents that take teenagers, because that's the majority of the ones that are in struggling and staying long periods of time in the Children's Center.
Yes.
One last question about how long does one be a foster until they're actually either reunited with the family?
So
Well,
that's a great question. Oh, go ahead, Ruby.
that depends on the planning. Once a foster child comes into care, immediately their goal is for reunification to return to parent. So it is a matter of how the parent is willing to do the services that the court mandates for them to do, and how quickly they are able to go through the process of finishing every mandate that the court places in order for them to return. Unfortunately, some biological parents do take their time. There are those instances where they don't. And in those instances, when the biological parent is not doing their due diligence to have their child returned to them, that's when we do a petition for the child to be put up for adoption. And that process is the parental rights are unfortunately terminated and the child becomes a ward of the state. And if a kinship placement is not found, which is a familiar person, an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, or even, let's say, neighbor, that knows the family that is willing to take on the child. That could be a kinship resource. If none of those are found, then the foster parent, if they're willing to adopt the child, then that is a process that we go with.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll, as I usually say, I'll land my plane here.
Thank you for
Well,
your
if you know
question.
anybody else that was wishing to be a foster parent, let us know.
Yes. And then, Maria, we will, because I see in your chat, will we provide our information? So yes, we will definitely provide our information. We actually have a slide. I was too quick with my screen, right? We have a slide that has our information. So if you guys want to screenshot it, you can, right? Arube and I, this is our direct number. So whenever you call, it will definitely come to us. Foster care it can be challenging, but it's so worth it, right? I think even as workers, one of my favorite kids, she's 15. And I was talking to her one day and I know that I care for these children, right? But I didn't realize how much they meant to me. And she said, I just want to be like you. And I started tearing up and I was like, who am I tearing up, right? But these kids are wonderful and they're sweet and they're artistic and they just need support and love, right? The same kid I asked, I said, what do you look for in a foster parent? And she said, honestly, I just want to like lay in the bed with my foster mom and eat popcorn and talk a whole bunch of garbage. And I want us to like hold hands the whole time, right? And you think, oh, well, this is a 16-year-old, like she probably doesn't want to hold hands, like she doesn't want to cuddle, like she's 16. But because she never had that, right? That's her dream. That's what a healthy relationship looks like to her. And so when we have these kids who are both 9 and 10 in the Children's Center for 90 days, it's not that they have these intense behaviors, which they may, but they don't even have the opportunity to show behaviors or show how wonderful they are because we don't have enough foster homes to place them. And so, like I said, whether you want to be a foster parent or not, or maybe you don't even know someone who wants to be a foster parent, but take our flyer, right? Tell people about Cardinal McCluskey because our kids, especially in our communities, right? These are the children of our families, our friends. We want to make sure we can house them properly and put them in homes where they're loved and safe. So
Sure. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
so much.
Alexis. And thank you,
Yeah.
Urube. I really appreciate you both joining us this evening. Still do drop your details in the chat if you can. And what I would also recommend, if you can join our general board meeting on, I think it's a Tuesday, April 25th. And there is a public session where you can speak for, 2 minutes and you can kind of just also talk a little bit about it. And if you can just resend me the flyer, we'll make sure that gets circulated on the email list for the community board. Thank you both for joining us again this evening. Really appreciate the important work that you do.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Likewise.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm putting both of our information.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful
Great.
one.
Thank you both. Thank you. So I know that we have Nicole from the Department of Veteran Affairs, but I also know that we have our council member, Sean Abreu, and I know you probably both have to go like ASAP. Is it okay, council member, if I just give Nicole a few minutes?
Of course, absolutely. Please.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Nicole. I believe you need sharing privileges, right? Or do you have those already?
Yes, well, I was going to check. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, I have an infant and it's feeding time and my husband can't do that. So I can try to give you 5 minutes of information because I'm going to have a hard stop, or I can try to come back and give you a full presentation. What would you like? What would the committee like?
Let's do a full presentation in May.
Okay.
We can reschedule, not a problem. I get
I'll
it
put
as
my
well.
information in the chat though, if you have any questions till then, which also has our website
Perfect.
as well.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. We look forward to seeing you in May. I'll follow up with you and make sure that you have the link for that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Great. All right. So those were the two, the presentation from our colleagues at Cardinal McCluskey and the presentation from the Department of Veteran Affairs. Those were our two main agenda items, but we also have updates from our elected representatives. And we have Council Member Abreu joining us this evening. Thank you.
Hello,
To give us an
hello.
update on what's happening with housing and kind of the legislation that you are working on. So I'll turn it over to you, and then we can have a discussion.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
thank you, Marielle, and thank you to the members of your committee. So there's the big fight right now, which is to make sure that every tenant who's entitled to a lawyer under the law facing an eviction gets one. We have over 19,000 cases where tenants are not represented and they're moving through the court system, though they are entitled to one under the law. And so we put forward a resolution that would be in support of state legislation by the state senator Brad Hoylman and Assemblywoman Rosenthal. They carry a bill that would require cases to not be moved and adjourned to a later date up until the point where a tenant has a lawyer. Basically saying a case cannot proceed without a lawyer, especially if they're entitled to one under the law. To be entitled to a lawyer under the law, you have to be below 200% below the federal poverty line. But we know that unfortunately cases are moving too fast, and the court system is doing nothing. So we put forward this resolution. We had a hearing on the bill, which is really a hearing on the resolution, and we're hoping to pass that as soon as possible. I'm not sure of any date so far as to when that would pass, but that would only be advisory in nature. It's not legally binding, so it won't really have an impact. It's more of sending a resolution as a message to show that the city is in support of this. The big fight right now is at the city council when it comes to the budget. Fortunately, the speaker put forward in her budget response, the council's budget response, a call for $195 million for legal services. But we actually know that to fully fund Right to Counsel is a lot more than that. The price tag being put forward by nonprofits, the nonprofit coalition, is $461 million. So we're barely at half, which is why we need the state to come through with funding this budget cycle for Right to Counsel and for the fair funding of nonprofits. Why do we need this money? We need to expand capacity to address the backlog of cases. We are anticipating of the 461 million, we need 110 million to fund the current Right to Counsel. But to fully fund Right to Counsel, there's a remaining 226 million that is necessary to address the backlog of cases, and an additional 125 million, which would be to help nonprofits address their overhead, as well as addressing pay parity. We know that public sector attorneys are leaving to the private sector because we're not paying them what they deserve. So all of this adds up to 461 million. We're taking a big stab at it now with budget response of nearly 200 million, fully knowing it's only a tiny fraction of what's needed, and that we need help from the state. We've been getting a lot of press coverage on this, and we need to keep up the momentum in order to make this a reality. It's something I ran on, which is very important for me. I went from being evicted as a child to becoming a tenant lawyer, keeping families in their homes. And I know that we're holding the line of the city council that if we don't see meaningful investment that for Right to Counsel, that this is not something that we will be supportive of. So those are my latest updates. We are far away from getting the budget done. It'll be sometime in June, but we'll know what our fight will look like once the state approves this budget and the difference that's needed for the city to come through with. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much again for joining us. I know, hi Aisha, thanks for joining us. I know Richard had a hand. It looks like you've now lowered it. Can I just check first with you, Richard?
I pulled it back. It was going to be a state more than a city question.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll turn it
Nice
over
to
to
see
you,
you,
Aisha.
Richard.
Aisha, over to you.
Hi, sorry for joining late. Mondays are busy, and I was hustling trying to get here through traffic. First of all, thank you very much. I caught the tail end of the previous presentation. I'll rewatch it on the video. It seems like it was very interesting. But Councilman Abreu, First of all, thank you for joining our meeting.
course.
Thank you for your advocacy on behalf of tenants. The question that I have is in relation to, and this is something that kind of precedes the pandemic, precedes the implementation of right to counsel, but something that has been exacerbated because of the pandemic, especially, which is that yes, we need right to counsel for all people to have representation. I remember when we were first fighting for right to counsel, it was stated 90% of landlords have representation when they go to court, and it's the inverse for tenants. 10% of tenants had representation. So we've made a dent in that, but we need to get it all the way across the board. So I am definitely with you on that. But what I see is this, where organizations that do get funding, and represent tenants do great job. They do great work, and they're the boots on the ground, but they only have resources to address a bucket of what the tenant may be experiencing, which is a part of the bigger picture and the pressures that are experienced. So like, for instance, maybe it's a non-payment case, but there is some form of harassment. There are other issues that are at hand, and sometimes the agency will say, well, we're only taking your case for this specific thing, but they don't have the resources to take on the bigger fight of what that tenant is experiencing and what they may be witnessing in that case. And I've seen that happen a lot of times. The other thing is because of the pandemic and the shortfall of labor and the increase in needs, that the ball is dropped as far as some of the services that were in place. So maybe it might be what's going on with their social services case, or with their voucher situation, or Social Security, or SCREE, or something like that, some other arm of, what are the supportive services that exist. And, sometimes it's nobody's answering the phone at what is the number on that letter, or they don't have enough staff to answer the phones because they are so overwhelmed. But what ends up happening is the ball gets dropped for that tenant or that resident, where their case didn't get renewed, or they're not getting the funds that they're supposed to be getting, and that kind of thing.
Yep.
And then it becomes a snowball that is even a bigger hill for whatever entity that's representing them to fight for them. So how do we implement a tier system to make sure that all those boxes are being checked for people?
Aisha, I think you raised a great point. This is a comprehensive battle here. Like, what good does it do if we have a tenant lawyer, someone is able to stay in their home, but the voucher system and the city services are not there, right? So, while we need tenant lawyers, we also got to think about what it means for people to stay in their homes. There's a package of bills regarding vouchers that are passing soon that expands eligibility for FEPS, for instance. Pirina Sanchez has that bill, and I'm a sponsor of that. It makes no sense that people have to prove ongoing ability to get city vouchers, to prove that they have a job to get city vouchers. It makes no sense. People need vouchers because they're out of work, and so that's something that we're looking at. I actually have a bill that was supposed to be passing tomorrow, but the speaker is holding it to pass it at a later date as part of a housing voucher package, and so the bill provides for electronic payment option. Believe it or not. There's only a thing we have for NYCHA, but we don't have it for private landlords. And so we have people ending up in housing court because government is not making payments on time. Right. Because government isn't using an outdated system that requires them to send paper checks to the landlords. That makes no sense. And so we have a bill that would allow for electronic payments, which we believe is going to make a big difference. The city wanted to push the effective date of this bill to 2027, despite the fact that they testified about it earlier this year, that they can get it done. But now that we're in bill negotiations, that we're actually pushing this forward and the speaker has our backing, now they're saying so basically now they're walking back their language, saying now we can actually get it done now. And our bill is forcing that conversation. And so now we're going to see all these voucher payments be done electronically. it
Mm.
makes it so that source of income discrimination is actually fueled by government. When government doesn't make its payments on time, that increases source of income discrimination by landlords.
100%.
Landlords need their money, they want their money, and if government is not paying their money, that makes it more likely that they're going to discriminate on tenants. And so it's actually a bill that's supported by the landlord industry, supported by tenants. It's a win-win for everybody, obviously, and so it's something that we're pushing forward as well. So it's I'm not sure. And with regard to the vacancies, it's not helpful that the administration is putting forward budget cuts across the board of all agencies. I'm going to be standing very firmly against those cuts. Right now, we need investigators in housing divisions to make sure that we are not seeing income-based discrimination, and where there is, that we actually have the enforcement mechanism to stop that in its tracks, right? We need our DSS to be able to make these payments on time, right? And so it means that we must take care of the essential services by our city agencies first and foremost, because then nothing else makes sense. Everything else you talked about is very important, Aisha. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And I just want to express to the committee, maybe we can put together a supportive resolution in regards to some of these bills. Just the impact of the electronic payments that just hit me. There's just one example, a woman that I advocated for. She was homeless and in the street with her mother and her children. Her mother was sickly. She was the only breadwinner in the family.
Yeah.
And was homeless, but the checks had been sitting on a worker's desk for months before she had even been evicted.
Yep, that's right.
That is the kind of solution that will solve that problem.
It should.
So I'm excited to hear that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Jay, over to you.
Good evening, council member. Thank you for sharing some of that information. Just had on a different focus, I kind of wanted to know what you're doing to push basically investments in your district, in our neighborhoods. If there was any capital or operational expenses for organizations in our community board that you're pushing for.
No, absolutely. We allocated $4.3 million last year for the Lily Brown playground on 163rd, between 163rd and 162nd. I was born and raised on 161st, which is home for me. So that investment was very meaningful. We partner with nonprofits like NIMIC. We fund Cloth, Palante, Palante Harlem, which also does work above 155th Street, which is part of the catchment area on 155th and above. This year, we're actually doing a tour in 2 weeks with Deputy Mayor Meera Joshi. The 10 Mile Park on 155 by the water, right when you get off the Denny Farrell Bridge near Riverside Drive, that there's an area there where there's the parking lot, there's a basketball court, there's a playground that's outdated. That's something I'm actually looking forward to make as part of a legacy project. We're asking the administration for $24 million this year for that. $24 million is a steep price, but we're pushing forward very strongly on this. I think it's a park that needs to be made available for our kids, a park available for our youth as an important hub area. We also want to make sure we're keeping the vibrancy there with picnic. I know there's often used by our community there for picnic, so it's something that we want to keep. I now moved back to the Upper West Side to River Arts, 159 Riverside Drive. So you'll be seeing the neighborhood will be seeing a lot more of me. I mean, I'm pretty active around there, but even more so now that I live in the neighborhood. But every time I'm always thinking about the neighborhood when it comes to making budget investments. There's the 157 little plaza there across from Chipotle that's owned by Parks. We're looking to also revamping that area to secure some capital improvement for that parkland. There's a lot of, I can send you some of the investments we've made. I can send it over to the committee so we can, itemize it so you can see where the money's going.
Yeah, well, thank you. I was mainly talking about, at least for this year's budget, which besides the capital funding on the Riverside Park, for any other pushes you're doing, like maybe to, because I'm sure NMIC and Clough are always asking for operational, and I'm also sure that's very hard to come by, for them to do their services.
So your question is, what else is coming? What else we're pushing for this year?
Yeah.
Well, we're always, we're looking to secure additional funding for the nonprofits. So the nonprofits, that we call it restoration, we want to get them to where they were, but also getting the increase is hard. And so those are things I can push directly with the speaker's office as part of our speaker asks. That's something that, we're very happy to do. In addition to that, we have a big announcement in the next few weeks on containerization that we can't necessarily speak on yet, but it's something that we've made a big push for. We're happy to send you news on that in the next few weeks. But those are investments for our neighborhoods, especially is in District 7. And so those are some of the things, we're pushing for. There's also, let's see, there's also just every time we fund a project, we have to, a lot of these projects are underfunded. And so we want to make sure that we're also placing money for underfunded projects that were funded by my predecessor, but that requires for us to make sure that we pay for that difference. And so those are some of the things we're pushing for. But any other specific questions, like things that we should be looking into that you think we may be overlooking?
Yeah, if I may, you
Go
were
ahead, Richard.
cautious in your words on containerization, but I'm sort of curious, are you proposing a District 7 project, or is that part of a citywide project? And
I can't comment on that yet, but give it a few weeks when the executive budget comes out.
know that it's a subject of interest. Okay.
It's going to be game changing.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, council member. Yeah, helpful to, as you said, in terms of, the investments, as we come up on, the community boards, capital expenses, as we do that in the fall. Helpful to have that input, not only from your office, but also, we'll be asking the same thing from, council member De La Rosa's office. I know Aisha mentioned, I had put forward the suggestion of a resolution coming from this committee.
Yeah, I think you brought that up
capturing-
too last time we met.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly why we invited you. So yes, I would like the committee to consider that. But I also know that there is a hand in the public, Courtney. So Courtney, I'll go ahead and unmute you and I'll give you 2 minutes. I imagine your question may be for the council member. So just 1 second. Hold on. Okay. Courtney? You should be able to unmute.
I did not have a question. I did not have my hand up.
Okay. Then maybe it's a tech thing, but okay. Thank you. But thank you for joining. All right. Great. Any other questions for the council member while the council member is here? Just want to check and see.
Jay, you have another question?
Not another question. I just wanted to emphasize why we're asking these type of questions is, I'm new to the board, and I really didn't like the process that I went through on supporting capital and operational expenses in our community board. It was kind of like a repeat show. And so, we're hoping to expand on both helping our council members push for funding for organizations in our community board that need assistance to be able to do the good work that they're doing.
Absolutely.
So if you can send us information on specific organizations that you're pushing for.
Yeah, we're happy to do that. I will. I'll send you the our priority list, which is honestly, if there's a nonprofit that we aren't funding, let us know. We also fund the Uptown Soccer folks. We also fund what's the other? YALL, the Youth Adult Leadership Development, a sports group. We fund DCWP, the Dominican Center for Women, led by Rosita Romero. There's a lot of nonprofits that we provide a lot of funding for. And so we'll get you that full list.
Perfect.
So Mariela, I'll have Jaleesa send it to you. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Aisha, it looks like you have a final point, maybe?
Yes, could we, and this is a conversation I had previously with, I believe it's Manny that was in Mark Levine's office before you succeeded him. In relation to district-specific data that your office receives, so that, because, of course, you represent a broader spectrum of the city than just our nook of the world, but that we can have an understanding of what your office is looking at in regards to the housing and human services purview, so that we could understand what we should be responding to and what's happening, what are the trends that are taking place. So
makes complete sense. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, Marielle, I'm good to go, right?
You are good to go, but we'll certainly be following up with your office. Thank you for joining us.
And Jay, have faith in this project. Have faith in government. I love that you've joined the community board. I'm sure you're going to gain a lot from it. All right.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And so I invited the council member to our meeting as part of, as you may have seen in the agenda, kind of monthly updates from elected representatives. And this is part of kind of circling back on a point that we made at the beginning of the year in terms of how we work as a committee. And so obviously we were able to hear from the councilman directly in terms of a lot of the kind of the bills that he's working on, but also things that we should be aware of. I do want to circle back though to Aisha, your suggestion of putting forward a resolution that can come from this committee in support of that, of a lot of the bills that the council member was referencing. I imagine in terms of timing, probably it would be good for us to put it forward now for April. Recognize that obviously there's a lot of things that are happening over the next month or two. And it would be good to kind of get ahead of things, but open to discussion. Aisha?
I just wanted to say I spoke to Mary Anderson and I'm honestly remiss in following back up with her. I told her I was going to forward her pretty much what I said to her at the moment that I saw her, which is in some of the statement that I was making to Councilman Abreu in regards to the dynamic where offices have a shortfall, the human services need is disrupted because of that, and how it factors into potential evictions, but also into drop in services, whether it be the screen not being renewed or the voucher not being renewed. And that is something that overlaps with aging as well. So I don't know necessarily that maybe we will have a joint meeting, but maybe it's something that we can circulate the ideas of the resolution into both committees. And so we could kind of have a united front where that's concerned.
That's a good point. I will say I had a chat with about a month or two ago with Carmen de la Rosa's office, and we talked about the vacancies, the high vacancy rates in a lot of these departments and the impact that that's having. And yes, it does tie into, as you mentioned, kind of the cause of some of these evictions and things like that unfortunate case that you mentioned. I state that, but I almost see it as two separate resolutions. I don't think we should omit or kind of make note of that in the resolution in support of the bills that Councilmember Abreu spoke about this evening, but I see the one on the vacancies as a separate resolution that we could also put forward and saying this is the impact that it's having on, human services, not just things related to housing, but all across, the different issue areas of human services. any thoughts on that approach, and happy to approach Mary and the Aging Committee for their thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that gives us the opportunity to really flesh out the issues, instead of it just being like, a touch point, because it is a serious matter that's affecting a lot of people. Yeah. So
Okay.
I think that's a good position.
Okay. So I'm just jotting this down in terms of, can I ask, would anyone want to support in drafting one of the two resolutions?
So one would be for the package of bills that the council member was referencing related to city FEPs.
So the one, sorry, one resolution would be in support, exactly, in support of the bills that the council member spoke about regarding the right to counsel. But also the bit around, and maybe we can kind of figure out what the right timing is for this one. I don't know. And I will need to follow up with his office. I know he talked about the bill on the electronic payment as well, and that as well. So I almost see it as like one supporting a lot of those different pieces, because I think, to the point that both Aisha and the council member made, it isn't just one thing. It's really a lot of different things. It's really, how can we look at this from an entire view, and rather than just kind of siloed. And then the other one would be on the impact of the vacancy rates within the different departments that has on social services. Aisha, I think I caught that right? Go ahead.
Yeah. I believe that you were already assistant chair when Ariel put forward a resolution which addressed a long-standing advocacy for some of these issues. I know that it included voucher issues, the impact of evictions, but just a lot of the history of grassroots efforts to address some of these problems were included in one resolution that I believe it got ratified by the board, if I remember correctly. But just to prevent being repetitive, I think we want to pull that and look at what we did there. I think the electronic payments is new, because I don't remember hearing that until now. But maybe we can reference that we had already done that resolution in this new resolution and add on whatever else. And of course, that, let's look at the bills to see what they're already saying and see what our district specifically needs that may not have been carved out in those things.
In those bills, yep. Thank you for that. And yeah, as I was saying, I was like, wait, I feel like we did do something around that. I'll need to kind of pull it up, and I'll check on the website to find that. Okay, I mean, I don't think we probably have the time to draft two resolutions this evening. So in terms of timing, I'm just trying to I also kind of want to get ahead of it, so to speak, rather than it be kind of retroactive, and not have to wait until, what is it, May? Yeah, I'm just, I know in the past, some committees have put forward resolutions on behalf of the committee to the executive board, and then to be kind of officially voted on at the general meeting. Is that the approach that we would like to take, or do we want to wait until May, so that way everyone has a chance within this committee to help shape it, and then vote as a committee in May? Am I getting my timing right? What do you think, Aisha?
Councilman Abreu may have just said, is he still on?
No,
Because
I think
I
he dropped
wonder,
off.
what is the timeline that the council is looking at in regards to when they expect it to be heard, finalized, and then therefore voted on? Because then we know how much time we have to work with.
Exactly. So what I understood, and Richard, I see your hand, what I understood is on the bill regarding the right to counsel, there was a hearing, And it's possible that it will happen quite soon. How soon, we don't know. The other one regarding the budget, I think that has to wait until the state budget is passed. And then my understanding is that will be probably sometime in June. And not sure so much on the electronic payment bit or on the other kind of package of bills. And then he also talked about the vouchers.
So,
Richard? Sorry, Jay, one second. Can I have Richard come in since Richard had his hand up, and then over to you? Is that all right?
Yeah,
Thanks.
just real quick. I think Marielle, you hit on the big variable there. Is there someone prepared to draft a resolution in a very short timeline here? If there is, I think it'd be good to go ahead this month. It might well get kicked back from the executive committee to coordinate with some other committees.
Yeah.
But if we're in any position to take the lead and get what we want out there, it's probably a good idea. But I'm also not raising my hand to draft that resolution. So I know I can only push so hard.
Thanks, Richard. Jay?
I'm a little confused. So from because what Councilmember Abreu was saying is that they did a resolution and support a right to counsel, which is a state legislation, which is, not something that's guaranteed at any point. And session for the state is until June, but who's to say that that will pass and get signed by the governor? So I think what you were saying is to do, because it sounds like I'm trying to make clear that one would be to support right to counsel. Is that?
So slightly. So what we're thinking is two separate resolutions coming from the community board. The first one on vacancy rates, and that's vacancy rates within New York City departments and the impact, the fact that these, different departments are not staffed, the impact that has on social services. So that's one. And I think that one we can slightly wait a little bit, but I think there's a point of following up with Carmen de la Rosa's office, because I believe she sits on the committee for like civil service or something. And so she had raised it.
She chairs labor and civil service.
There we go. Even better. And so the other resolution that we would like to put forward as a committee would be in support of the various bills that Councilmember Abreu spoke about just now. My understanding is that the right to counsel one is still a bill yet. It hasn't been passed, but they're looking to pass it soon. And then there's a separate one regarding, and I believe it's separate. I'm not sure if it's separate. This is kind of me also checking my own understanding around, the full amount that's needed and how much the state will be able to put forward for this. Obviously, that's, the city bill that he's putting forward is dependent on what's being put forward in Albany. The city council budget is not passed until June. And this is me testing my own understanding of all of this as a newbie as well. So you're in good hands, Jay, or you're in good company, shall I say. And then for a bill to kind of match or kind of be able to meet that 461 million threshold, or that amount that's being asked for. In addition to that, a series of bills, again, all on housing, for instance, the electronic payment option for tenants on vouchers. And then there's a separate one also on vouchers, but I'm not sure if that's the same one or a separate one. So I'll need to kind of go back, watch the recording, probably call his office and ask questions and do a lot of research. But happy to hear from others, because if I misunderstood or please do correct me if I am misspeaking or I missed something.
Richard, is that the same hand from before, or?
Yep. You continue to be very perceptive.
I guess I'd be willing to work on the one related to the bills. So I guess, but to get more clarity on what those bill numbers are in the city council.
Mhm.
And as for the funding, I think, I don't know how the city council works. So for the funding, I'm
I'm
not sure
learning
that,
too.
I'm sure they pass like an appropriation bill, but I think for the funding, we can just write in support of the total amount that he mentioned, which was 461, right? And that was for New York
Mhm.
City.
Mhm. That's my, yes, that's my understanding.
Expand for all of New York City, and fully fund.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, like, we'll need to follow up with his office as well. And you know, they can send an email, ask for those numbers and kind of, go back and listen to the recording as well. We can work on it together. So that way it's, and then we can, if the committee is okay with it, I imagine we have to put forward a vote for us, recognizing that this is probably quite timely, as Richard suggested, put it forward to the executive. And then because of, we want to be mindful of open meetings law, we'll put it forward to the executive board or the executive committee, excuse me, later this month to vote. It's quite possible that they'll say, actually go back to and share it with the other committees, but just wanted to, I think that might be the timeline of the process.
So my sound cut out a little bit there. I just want to make sure I understand. It's two resos. One is kind of like the tenant bucket and the other one is the human services on the vacancy issue. Okay.
Mhm.
And so the
Correct.
tenant bucket would be like rights of council as well as like these payment things, because that's all tenant
Yes,
supporting.
exactly.
That sounds
So
good.
kind of like one that kind of captures everything. Exactly.
Nice, thank you.
Yep. No, thank you. I imagine we have to vote for this to be put forward to the executive. This is me not really knowing my Robert's
Motion.
rules. So can someone put a motion forward for us to draft those two resolutions as discussed? Although I will say maybe it's just one for now, or should we also put forward the vacancy one as well at the same time? Or can we wait until May?
Since
What's
it
the
was
preference?
Richard kind of his language put it in motion. Can we accept that as a motion and have somebody second it?
That works. So can I
Is
get a
that
second?
okay with you, Richard? Since it
Well, I have no objection, though I don't exactly remember the language.
So the
Would you
motion,
like to put a motion or Jay?
I'll just repeat the motion. The motion is to do one resolution in support of various bills and funding related to tenant protections and assistance. And another resolution, which can come at a later date, being that the mayor hasn't put out his final executive proposal, is on vacancy rates for the agencies and the impact on the agencies related to social services.
I would be glad to second that,
There you
now
go.
that I know what it is.
All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
I'll take silence.
Aye.
Yeah, we're taking silence as an aye. Any objections? No. Okay, so it passes. Thank you. So Jay, I will follow up with you and we can work on that draft together. And then we'll kind of take it forward from there. And thank you in advance for your support. Okay, I did just want to, moving on, I think it's to what, new business now? There was someone, I think the community member may have left. Let me see. Maria Acevedo, who wanted to talk about a program it looks like Maria has left. And I'll just go ahead and read it. Okay. It's about, okay, so Maria Acevedo serves as the community engagement manager at Hot Bread Kitchen. And Maria has put her email and phone number in there, and they offer free culinary training, job placement with $200 weekly stipend, culinary English second language, kind of some programs for food entrepreneurs. And so the link is there. And so my understanding is that this has been emailed or will be emailed shortly to the entire community board email list. So that's again from Hot Bread Kitchen. Just wanted to flag that. All right. I have just one other point under new business. So Emily and I met with Wayne from Land Use and Porfidio about a week or so ago in a follow-up to Manhattan Borough President's right to housing kind of plan that was laid out in his speech earlier this year. And so coming out of that discussion, I can't seem to find my notes, but coming out of that discussion, we did agree that obviously there's a lot of overlap on some of the work that Land Use does, as well as the work that this committee does. And so we are looking to do two things. One, Land Use is looking to help identify empty lots within Community Board 12 to the Manhattan Borough Presidents that could be used for potential housing. And so I think they're going to kind of do some brainstorming on what that looks like. They had a meeting last week, and unfortunately I was unable to join it. So I don't know how far that discussion, went. And that was after that initial meeting that I just mentioned. So I do need to kind of follow up on that. But then we, as the Housing and Human Services Committee, in that conversation with Wayne and Porfidio, agreed to do a little bit of research around what is affordable for Washington Heights and Inwood. And so we'll be doing, and this is where I would love volunteers or anyone who's interested or has kind of, background in a lot of this work, but information around AMI. What is, what is the income, the average median income in this area? What is affordable in Washington Heights and Inwood? I know that we often have this discussion about, affordable housing, the fact that there really hasn't been much affordable housing really in our area. And so we would like to kind of do a little bit of research around that. Ultimately, with the Land Use Committee, we would like to host some point probably in the fall. And again, this is very much kind of preliminary. These are just kind of some early discussions, some kind of a workshop with community members, community organizations, as well as developers, probably inviting the Manhattan Borough President himself and kind of other community stakeholders to have a discussion on some of this in the fall. Again, it still has to be fleshed out, but if anyone's interested in getting involved with some of that, let me know. Richard.
I have a very circuitous question here.
Okay.
We just approved a resolution around vacancy rates. And I'm not sure I completely understood the content of what we were trying to say there, but I'm looking at maybe there's a link between these two discussions. I'm just trying to figure out if there might be.
So the vacancy rates resolution is around the vacancy rates of the departments and the agencies and the impact on human services. And so this bit is more around the empty
My
lots.
misunderstanding. I'll save you the rest of it.
Okay, no worries. But yeah, if anyone has questions on this, feel free to reach out, or if you want to help with some of that and kind of doing some of that research, certainly appreciate it. I think that's it for new business. Does anyone else have anything under new business? Richard?
Madam Chair, would you accept a motion to adjourn?
I would. Can I get a second?
A second.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you, Jay. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to continuing the work with all of you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you,
Good
Madam
night.
Thank
Chair.
you. Good night.
Good night.